Are we recording now? Cool.
Yeah.
I'm so mad. Why? Why is it not in dark mode?
I think a
Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on
I'm
again?
closing the tab and reopening it.
Oh, it's because you're using the. Oh, well, now I'm using the web.
I think we have to. I think somebody has to have an issue.
Shut your mouth.
I think somebody has to have an issue with dark mode every episode.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like we could put that on the hostility bingo card.
Oh, we do.
That's
do
like
need
the
it.
free space.
I was about to say, yeah,
Do
that's
Team
guaranteed the free
screws up
space.
dark mode.
One of them is
So
That's the center one.
All of Word is not in dark mode. Why?
if you guys can get me some prompts and stuff, I could add that to the website. Just like a bingo card generator.
No, it's all right.
That would be awesome.
We do need a bingo card at some point.
Yeah.
We could. This could,
I'm-
not necessarily. Yeah, this is a developing thing.
Yeah.
That could be a bi-weekly, like a leading up to an episode social media post. Is this week's hostility bingo card? You can have
That would
different.
be fun.
It doesn't necessarily have to have clues on it every time, but
Yeah.
every now it could have like clues to
Yeah.
the episode. But then it could just have some of the standard stuff, like literally that's the center spot, like for sure. That's definitely it.
If we wanted to be really fancy about it, what we could do is AI generated bingo cards and take our previous episodes, have it fed through Ian's that box thing that we talked about a few episodes ago that I
don't
keep
trust
blanking
it.
on the name, but he just gets transcripts of it and then feeds the transcripts back in and asks for bingo card prompt
I don't trust it.
from it. I think that would be funny. Because we could add the whole
It's gonna steal our ideas, and
generated
our
by
platform.
AI to our repertoire.
Okay, so you're thinking a part 2 of this.
Mhm.
So continuing the discussion we had last time,
Mhm.
the discussion we don't remember where we left off.
No, we left off at everyone agreed that what I put out, whereas while it pained everybody that it was so simple, there was general consensus, at least stated on
Yeah.
air,
Okay,
that it was agreed to.
and so
I don't remember. I don't recall.
And what would
That was one of our least hostile
what addition
episodes.
do we need to? What is predicating the part 2? This is what I'm curious about. If we came to a conclusion, then
Welcome to Hustle in the Morning. I'm your host, John. Joining you today by.
Nathan,
Steven.
Matthew.
I'm going to let you guys know it's not been a good past couple weeks.
Bro, really?
No, it hasn't been the best of times. We're no. you know that entire little skit in South Park where you have the man who runs the Chinese restaurant and he's up there building his wall and he's almost complete, and then a Mongolian army comes and knocks it down. That has been every single project I've been working on for the past month and a half.
Your city wall.
My shitty wall. Yes. It's been a wonderful time. I'm very much full of sleep. There is no frustration or anger at all. I'm very satisfied with the work that is being completed right now.
Well, good. Then it's a really good thing you're on call as well.
and this, ladies and gentlemen, is when John nearly launches himself across the table.
I swear, if that on-call phone goes off during the recording, you're gonna
Is
get
it here?
Oh, it's here.
Please tell me it's on ring.
Yes, 100%.
Yes.
It
Is
has
it
to
here in the room with you?
Yes, it is. It's here with us right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are playing with fire tonight.
It's gonna,
Hostility roulette.
it's gonna be a bad time. Because Nathan, what are we discussing tonight?
Well, I thought we could talk about part 2 of what was discussed in episode 20.
I don't remember anything that was discussed back then. It's been a little bit.
So I also threw out there, if the rest of y'all just want to ramble about things for the next however long we let this mess continue, you're welcome to do that.
Well, I remember you said we were discussing users last episode,
Yes.
and you want to discuss different types of users this time.
Yes.
You want to discuss morons?
Sure.
I have met a new one that I am not going to disclose when this individual may have been met, but I have now found a new level of.
Incompetent users.
I didn't actually want to say incompetent. I was going to try to use a different word, but incompetent should work.
So I was thinking of defining the lesser user or the lower level user.
Yes,
Because we
of
discussed,
intelligence. Yes, this individual meets that requirement.
we had discussed in the previous episode the standard definition for a normal or standard user, which pained all of you how very low that bar was.
Incredibly low.
But
So-
it was fair.
There's a lower bar, which
Known as a point of contact. Yes.
which I have listed as an uneducated user. Now, within uneducated, there's two subtypes, and I'm keeping this simple, so there's only two. There's untrained and intentionally or willfully ignorant. John?
This individual doesn't fall into either because, based on what I've been informed, they are well trained, and their ignorancy is woefully like just out of this world. I
Elaborate, please.
want to take this individual. I want to walk him into a nice science center, and we need to study him.
Sorry.
That's not the pager phone, Steven. That's the recording.
I know. It didn't move.
You don't worry about
Okay.
that.
I'm
That
sorry.
anyways,
And we're back.
we're back. So this specific individual, I have worked with many of people from all walks of life in my IT career, right? I've dealt with people that classify themselves as computer illiterate. I have worked with people that have classified themselves as, Mr. Mac and Windows himself. I have now met a person that has set a new standard of what it means to be a, quote, IT professional. Might I walk you through the events?
Spin us a tale. Pin us a picture.
So, when you are operating under a crucial timeline for a core subject or a core tenet, pillar, you might say, I want to use every type of scenario I can here. When you're trying to move something of that importance to a new platform for your organization,
Kind of like the cloud, maybe.
potentially the cloud. Steven, if a project manager came up to you as the point of contact, and you were asked and you agreed to the task of, can you please inform your organization that we are moving this platform at this date? Would you A, send an email to inform your organization this is happening? B, would you go around to each individual user at your organization and inform them this is happening? C, would you tell your CEO that this is happening and no one else? Or D, would you tell nobody?
Oh, clearly D. It has to
Obviously, D.
D, and you do it on a Friday.
You don't. Yeah, you do
You're-
the not telling on a Friday.
You, sir, you're a smart one, because we had
A gentleman and a scholar.
we had a meeting on a Friday because this thing, I will say, it was a disorganized mess because their back end is just horrendous and it was difficult to try and get them there. We got them there in the end, but no end user was informed. No end user knew what they were supposed to do come the migration day. Come that time period, all the crucial information that was shared with other key individuals, because main point of contact didn't share anything, everyone was still incredibly frustrated. And number 4 is, while everything is in flight, let's just go ahead and request for some additional changes.
Oh, like mid migration, mid
Yes.
task
Yes.
at hand.
Yes.
Oh, just that's normally when
The
that
brakes
happens.
have been severed and the freight train is like screaming down the railway. And they're like, you know what? Let's tack on a few more passengers.
Yeah.
Just chuck them on.
Yeah.
Legitimately.
So okay, but the timeline wise, so y'all had the. Are you saying you had the meeting saying, "Hey, this is happening" on a Friday?
We had meetings a month and a half prior
Oh, all leading up to this,
saying this was happening.
and Friday was the day that it was
we had
occurring.
meetings 2 weeks before the cutover saying this was happening. The original deadline got pushed because they weren't ready and they didn't provide us with the necessary back end that we needed to be ready, so we delayed it. During that delay, we went through and blitzed through everything that we needed, which was incredibly painful, mind you, and we're in constant contact with the client, letting them know this is where we're at. Are you guys ready?
And when you say the client, you mean the point of contact that we're discussing.
Yes, and their boss.
Oh, okay. So at least one other person.
One of them was aware.
Okay.
We had the meeting Friday prior to the cutover, which was on a Wednesday. And
so it was Friday.
So
And then the following Wednesday, the things happened.
So mind you, they had over a month and a half to notify their organization this is happening. Month and a half.
That's real short notice.
Everyone found out the migration is happening 3 hours prior to the migration kicking off. 3 hours.
Oh, so they did find out beforehand.
Yes, because
notification.
Enough people were word of mouth inside the org after a couple key individuals found out that everyone was freaking out and were running into some offices asking what's happening.
So the proper communication of
was gossip.
Everyone, let know was gossip. I love it.
I mean, that is the most effective mode of intercompany communication.
It's the fastest mode of intercompany communication for sure, yeah. The dissemination of information. Yeah, you can't beat gossip.
The gossip lines are always the fastest.
No, I mean, it would have been nice if that got... See, you all right. This is a learning experience.
We're not done yet.
Well, this is a learning experience for you and your
more.
team. Is now, when it comes to project communication, part of your SOP needs to be leaking the details of the cutover day to another individual in the organization anonymously so that they can gossip about it and it can actually get out to people the way it's supposed to.
That's actually brilliant.
I
hate it so much.
Within your conversations, you need to identify the chatty Cathy in the organization and make sure that they accidentally get BCC to an email.
I hate how accurate and how nice that actually could legitimately be. I'm not going to do that, but I'm definitely going to take note for if this type of scenario ever happens again.
You're welcome.
Because you would have thought, after this fiasco, they would have learned from their mistake of, if we ask them to do something, you should probably do it, right? We're about a week past, and they are specifically attempting to still try to almost not undermine the project, but show their deficiencies of their skill set to such a degree that now multiple people are questioning why he's still there.
People within their organization?
Their org, yes. I also submitted some requests to other key individuals in our organization to no longer be in communications with that individual.
Well, is this an example of dislike of change?
No.
Really?
This is a direct example of whenever, I'm not going to say you faked your way. So this wasn't fake it till you make it. This was very much I did things my way for so long. Now things are changing and I don't know how to adapt. So I will just keep doing things my way, which I understand why the organization is in such a disheveled state. Mind you, this is also the organization. We are in Q4 now of 2024?
Almost.
No, it's still Q3.
Okay, so
close.
Tail end of Q3 of 2024. They still have AMD FX series processors actively running in their organization right now.
Wow.
Active.
Woo! Are they at least pile driver?
I don't know. I was just told it's FX series, and I was like,
that's
I
what I've got
can't.
running under my TV, but it's a
God.
very different environment.
That's a whole different.
That's completely different.
Yeah.
This isn't a business crucial machine.
Oof, that's
awesome.
No.
Bet
No,
they
it's
don't
not.
Bet they don't have to have space heaters under their desks.
Doubtful. I like every time the lead in that area comes back to me, he's like, I discovered something else. The only thing I can say is, can you stop now? That's all I ask.
Can you not?
Just please put the shovel down. The hole is already almost to China. We're done. We don't need to poke all the way through. We're okay. This was I don't like to crap talk other IT professionals or IT directors, because like some of them I do question, how did you get there? Based off the experience I'm having with you right now, and like I'm asking you some questions that you should know the answers to, and your face is completely blank. And then I ask you a more basic question, your face is still completely blank. That's a problem. This was, I can ask all of that, and I could probably ask you your name, and your face is probably blank. I just feel bad.
So confused, it just stops.
Yeah, I'm just like, I can't. And when you get to that point of your career where this is the best you can offer, I think it's time for you just to part ways. Find something else. Maybe gardening.
We are still talking about another client, right? Not like
Yes.
our organization.
Correct.
Okay, good. Because a lot of this was sounding familiar. I just wanted to make sure that we were still not talking
No,
about our organization.
I would never talk bad about our organization's the best.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that is a type of user.
I would say that's a unique type of. I would say that
It's not as unique as unfortunately one would think.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still. I think that it's in a low enough percentile as far as our experience at this point that we could call it a niche.
Why is John frantically
It's very,
shaking his
very
head?
much shaking his head.
He looks like he's about to explode.
Because this isn't unique. Now,
I mean, it keeps coming up, but I mean, it's not like every other time.
Once, it's a one-off. Twice, it's a coincidence. I'm like, okay, you know, as soon as it happens the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 12th, 18th, Steven, that's gone past a pattern. This is now a standard. This is almost becoming an SOP, that it's a requirement.
For IT directors to be
Yes.
terrible?
Incompetent. Yes.
I mean, well,
I hate saying, because I've met some really, really good ones that, like, you can tell they worked their way up to their spot. It wasn't just, you came from finance and then they told you you're now over IT. Good
Mhm.
luck. Like, in that scenario, you're just set up for fail. I get that.
yeah.
But in other,
Okay, all right. Well, let's at least caveat this with the
this
with
individual has a
potential
technical background. He's
I
a
know,
very
I'm not talking
extensive
about
technical background.
not talking about this one. I'm talking about just that if we're gonna start talking about a generality,
Yeah.
if we're generalizing this, I would say that it's fair to at least
Question your management. Yes.
to at least qualify it with some of these instances that we've run into, the the position of being incompetent in your position was thrust upon someone. It wasn't necessarily their decision, or it wasn't in their career plan. Some of
Fair.
them, yes, but some of them also not.
So you're saying you need to peruse their LinkedIn before you judge.
Well, people need to think before they do things.
You can't do that.
I know that it's hard.
We have AI that does that for us.
Well,
now,
this
Steven.
would have been prior to the inception of what we call AI.
Machine learning.
Before that, some of these people have been in their jobs
Automation?
for decades.
I don't know. It was before automation. What's scripting at that point?
I
What
guess so,
What was
yeah.
before scripting?
I mean,
Nothing.
that's all forms of automation.
But like,
But we didn't
but-
call it automation.
yeah, but
until,
we're
the early
we're talking
2000s.
about the buzzwords.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because it's now
No, I guess yeah.
it's AI. Before that was machine learning. Before machine learning was automation.
Mhm.
And then before automation was scripting.
Mhm.
Before scripting was, I don't remember.
All that's before
I
my
would
time.
say that no, I'd say scripting is technically the granddaddy, because you would effectively I think you would effectively define back to the time when they had punch cards. You would consider that scripting, would you not?
I
was
hate
programming.
that was
programming.
Was that okay?
Yeah.
No, that was programming.
So program would be the original, the granddaddy, and then scripting kind of would have evolved from program. Well,
Scripting, if I remember
you have to
correctly,
have the program
You would probably
initially
you would probably
to then
have
script within it.
You would
Yes.
probably have computing somewhere in there.
Well,
'Cause
but computing is like the
a
base
computer
function of a
automated
computer.
doing math.
well,
That was just the inception of the computer.
no,
It does
but
computing.
but we still, when we're specking out workloads, compute is one of the workloads.
Sure. But compute has occurred ever
It's all
since the
math.
first computer.
Math is
The
math.
first computer
Listen,
was built in order to compute.
I'm fully with Wendell from Level 1 Text on this one. It was a mistake letting sand think. This was all a mistake.
not
were-
letting it.
we were
think,
fine
teaching
with
it to think.
Springs
ele-
and dials turning and clicking.
We literally took a substance that was an abrasive and we said, that seems like we can turn that into intelligence.
No, but see, that's not what the original computer was. Had nothing to do with silicon.
So I just had a thought.
We've really gone off track here.
I know, and we're about to go even farther off track.
Okay. All right.
Question for the panel.
Okay.
Are APIs modern or current scripting?
Say that again.
Are APIs really just the current iteration of advanced scripting?
It depends on what kind of API you're talking about. So this is one thing that really aggravates me is that there's API is just kind of thrown around. This is my rant
It's a
for today.
generalized term.
It's a very generalized term. Typically today, when you hear API, what that means is that there is a service that you can call endpoints on and then retrieve data, right? So you are a client and you are requesting data from an API. Before the web took over and you had the current tech stack that you do now, an API was just a library. Like it's an application programming interface. That's what the term stands for, or the acronym stands for. It was a lot more localized, right? Like it had a completely different meaning to it. Now it's just like everything's an API. Like everything from your packages, your dependencies to your like server that you're contacting for whatever.
Effectively, an API is just the thing that connects two things, right?
Yeah. Or it's you connect to it to get stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Is typically how, or you set it up to serve stuff
It's a
to
broker
people that request it. Yeah, kind of.
It's a broker of things.
Yeah.
It's also a breaker of things.
Well,
100%. But you script stuff to call an API. An API isn't it's not exactly a script itself, if that makes sense.
See, the reason, and actually that kind of does in a way answer the question, because where I'm getting at with this is that scripting, correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
but scripting is you are taking pieces of existing programs, but you're not creating a new program from your script. Your script is telling other programs what to do.
You were defining basically set functions of what you're wanting the program to go and do.
Yeah.
Based
And a
based
lot
off,
of
based off the
times-
parameters that you define.
a lot of times
Typically,
aren't
yes.
you expanding the capabilities of an existing program by using APIs to call on different things that expound upon it?
Yes.
If you're treating it in that manner, it's like you're calling in that kind of tense more like a plugin. So if your program didn't have this feature here, or if it didn't offer, say, like this type of integration, you can then go reach out to an API that could call that data through there, or to request that information to connect it through.
But
and then you can have a flow back and forth.
Yeah,
in
but
that
isn't
way,
like
in a very, very, very like that's
a
that's a
plugin
butchered
isn't
way of
a
explaining
plugin
it.
is typically a integration that is something that is built for the software by the software developer. Like a plugin is something that's made for that software.
Not specifically anymore. No. So originally, yes.
That's where I was thinking,
plugin.
Defining plugin versus API. Like API can be done after.
Think of it this way. Think of an app versus an applet. App's the full application. Applet is basically a small condensed version of it that can run on top of an application.
Okay.
And that's kind of what a plugin used to do. It was, this application doesn't have this functionality, I can then go and sideload technically another application
Uh-huh.
into this, run it on top,
Uh-huh.
and now my app has that full functionality.
So a plugin, that would be a classic use of the term API, where the application, so let's say DaVinci, right?
Yeah.
DaVinci has a API that developers can use to expand its functionality.
Mm-hmm.
It is exposing different functions and variables and stuff like that so that people can manipulate it and create plugins or scripts for
It's like a mod
DaVinci.
for a game.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. Just in a
Okay,
much.
but which one? That like a mod for a game? Would it be more like a plugin or more like an API?
That would be a plugin. The
Plugin,
API
okay.
is what they are using to manipulate the game.
Yes.
Okay.
But the end result is they have created a
the
mod.
The mod would have to have an API built into it to do the back and forth.
No, the mod is calling an API.
It's calling
Yeah.
an
The
API to
application
do
has an
things.
API and the mod is calling it. The application has an API and the plugin is calling it. Does
Why
that make
let
sense?
you people do this stuff?
Yeah. So plugins, mods, and scripts are the client, and then the API built into the application that's the server. That makes sense.
That makes a little more sense. Yeah. My only, because again, like
It's
I do not,
unnecessarily
and
confusing.
yeah, I do
Yes.
not, and I have not delved into that your world of developing anything in my career. The only thing that I really have, and I don't call it, it's not experience, it's just context.
Yeah.
That I really have context with as far as API is when I was looking more into functionalities of the Cisco Meraki platform several years ago at this point. Learned that it has its cloud dashboard has API capability, and it has a lot of like expanded functionality that people are using for network automation and stuff like that through the use of APIs that can be injected into the cloud dashboard and call on different things. And so like that's the context that I've used for thinking about APIs, but I can understand now based on what you're talking about it, like that's not a clear cut, tried and true.
So there are, if an application is set up to accept an API, it's still the same principle where the application accepting an API is, that is still the client and the API is the server. You're just kind of doing it the other way around, where you're still pointing the application to the API, but instead of, I'm trying to think of a good service off the top of my head.
Linux.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking like, so you have a service of some kind, and then you point, or like an application of some kind, and then you point it to an API, or you sign in with a service.
I'll simplify it down because you've seen app registrations in 365, right?
Yeah.
So same thing.
Okay.
Think of it. So 365 is the source, and this app wants to talk with 365.
Sure.
When you register the app to come in, you're using Microsoft's Graph API to allow it to come in.
Okay.
That's where you are.
And that's the instance where the API is facilitating the communication between the platform and the app that's wanting to talk to the platform.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Put in terms I know he understands.
Yeah.
So like an
The
example.
visual helps. I can visualize it.
The square goes in the round hole, Steven.
Yeah, kind of an example of where this is used a lot is like with
most everything actually goes in the square hole.
ChatGPT, right?
Sure.
Like OpenAI has an API for ChatGPT, and like 9 out of 10 in quotation marks AI services require you to have a ChatGPT account that you can point it to. So it is integrated with the OpenAI API for you to extend the functionality, and then you just have to provide it with your authentication token or login or whatever, and then it will do all that extra stuff.
APIs got out of control.
Yeah.
I mean, we really should have just made a new term for them. We should
Kind of like we should have made a new term for domains.
Yes. We should have just did like just use the term like what webhooks did, but just call them app hooks or something like that at that point.
I mean, maybe because like webhooks is just a reverse API.
Yes.
And it's just, the whole thing is unnecessarily obtuse. In some aspects, there's too many names for one thing.
Yes.
In like developer land, and then in this case, there's only one name, but it's applied to a bunch of different things. While technically,
Like domains.
they're very similar. It's not the same thing.
Well, it's oh my god, it's the same thing of the argument that people have against open source stuff is I found a problem. I'm going to solve this problem by writing a new solution. I'm going to go publish this solution. Oh my God, there's 17 other solutions to the exact same problem that I just solved.
17,000.
It's the same thing here as like, I need to present a solution to this problem. I need to have this piece of software connect to this piece of software, and I need something to act as the interconnect. That's API right now. But now, okay, I need this software now integrate, or actually my website to integrate with this piece of software. That's the webhook. Or computer to connect to computer. So now we have PPTP.
Oh God, don't start. Jesus
Going through all that
Christ.
stuff. What, you want me to go through peer to peer
No.
and all that fun
Actually,
stuff?
circling back to one of our original topics, Nathan, with your comment, here's a little thought experiment for you. I know that we haven't really moved on. We digressed from standard user to bottom of the barrel user. Didn't really
We
talk
haven't
about
truly
even
scraped the bottom
I
of the
know,
barrel.
but
Not
we haven't
yet.
even talked about the in between, the more reasonable in between there, and we haven't gone above standard user to like advanced user or anything like that. But in the context of a standard user, Nathan, what would be with our definition we established of a standard user? What would be your expectation of that user, and your the understanding you would expect them to have of what a domain is?
0. Absolutely 0. Because it is so insanely idiotic.
Okay, but if statistically speaking, if you could think of a percentage amount, of times
I am
in
in
your
a
head, if you went to this type of user, a whole room, like or different rooms individually of people, like 15, 20 people, right? And you just asked them, what is a domain in the sense of computers? What do you think most of their answers would be?
I legitimately don't have a clue because I try so incredibly hard to never ask them that question.
And to be
But
fair,
we have to know that answer.
See,
To-
but there's ways. Yes, we do have to know.
We
the
always
answer.
have to know that answer.
But
And
simply
that's
asking.
why this is a problem,
Okay.
people.
Okay, my turn now. So I cannot tell you how often I want to yell at even our own engineers and stuff. Stop
my bad.
asking the end user for a domain. They don't know what you're talking about. You have to use more words than domain. You must use more words than just, what is your domain? Do not ask that.
I still blame GoDaddy.
Do you want?
Personally, I blame
want-
GoDaddy.
Do you want me to specify saying public domain or private domain? Because they also won't know the difference between that either.
More words. You need to use more words.
That's more words.
Private
You need
domain,
still more.
public
That's two.
domain,
More.
web domain.
What? How? That's what it's called. Why are you getting mad? Don't
Personal
yell at
domain.
me. Shut up.
Microsoft domain.
That's a private domain,
That's
sir.
a private domain.
It's still a
Tech-
domain.
Well,
It still
But
uses
it
domain.
It falls within a category, though.
But
Each of the things we described are a different category of domain. That falls within one of the categories.
correct.
which you prove my point. You have to use more words than domain.
I
They
agree
They still
with
don't know
you.
that we're trying to say. They don't know the other words either.
I agree.
You
with,
can explain the rest of it.
I agree with Nathan to a point where you have to throw them a bone, right? You have to throw the user a bone. You have to help them out a little bit. Where I
No, watch
disagree,
them suffer
and I
because
don't
we
know
have
if-
to do it every day.
I don't know if you necessarily are pushing this, but where I draw the line is when, because this has happened to me before, where we're expected to just use the lingo of the user. If it's incorrect terminology, no. They need to adopt the correct terminology. Now, it's up to us to educate them so that they're not incompetent users, so that they have a fighting chance and that they know what the correct terminology is. If we haven't done that, that's on us. But once we have done that, if they continue to use incorrect terminology, that's on them.
It's almost never done. That education is almost
And
never
that's fair.
given.
That's
And
fair to expect
Yes.
the technicians and everybody to help them understand this is what the,
But it
the
also
terminology
gets-
is and this is what it means. But if the user at that point we move from an incompetent user to a willfully incompetent user, where they are just choosing to be ignorant.
Agreed.
And it
yeah.
also gets extremely tiresome, and it gets extremely old extremely fast, having to be like, because it's to the point, in my experience in my career, I've intentionally like tried to avoid it in the past couple of years. But I got to the point, like, I would consider part of my job as being an educator.
Yes.
almost, I don't give myself this much credit because these people are godsends and they do the Lord's work. But I mean, like almost, I don't like to call myself an educator because there's like teachers and actual educators that went to school for it, but it's just I had to and have to on a fairly regular basis do that education for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's not what I signed up for. That's not what being a technician is about. You are not supposed to be an educator. Your job is supposed to do the work.
But
You're
I think
supposed to know the techie stuff
yeah.
and do the techie stuff. Now, some of it comes along with the job. Don't get me wrong. There is a somewhat of an expectation of having to do it every now and then. But when you're in literally every interaction you have with a human being, you're having to do some form of education when that's not your strong suit, that's a problem. That is reaching the point of being outside of the bounds of your expertise and your job description. And it's like, okay, either this needs to become part of the job description, which it shouldn't be,
falls under the other
or
duties as
somebody
assigned line
else
that's
needs
on
to
the
do their
typical
job better, or
contract.
somebody else needs to be put in place to do that job
dumbest
who is
line of a
better at doing
contract
that
ever.
job.
Or all of the frontline tech workers needs to start screaming more often at the developers for being lazy and not renaming things like they should.
So rule number 1 of programming and development is that naming things is hard.
I didn't say it was easy.
No, it's very hard. I do think having, and part of this goes back to my earlier comment where there is an element of educating the users, and there's a lot of element of the users need to adopt the correct terminology. You can argue jargon and stuff like that all the time, but it exists for a reason. Words have meaning, and
whatever you want them to be.
when the normal user just throws that out the window and they call it whatever,
I'm gonna turn off the CPU now. Press this power button.
that's
on
a great
monitor.
example. That
So-
just muddies the waters and it makes everything difficult because they just
I had
don't
that
learn what
come
things
up
are actually
recently.
called.
See,
Oh, do tell.
I agree to a point, but also so much of what is done right now in the IT spaces is so unnecessarily complicated that just using
I think it depends on the space.
Yes,
it depends
very
on the
much depends
space.
on the space.
Yeah.
but using 1 or 2 word terms is often not enough.
And I don't disagree. But sometimes there is only a 1 or 2 word term when we get like turn on and off your monitor, and then they don't know what the monitor is, or they think it's something completely different. That's just ignorance and
Yeah,
and
that's
sometimes
agreed.
stupidity.
Hold on.
Agreed.
Steven has his hand up in the Teams call. Go ahead, Steven.
God, I hate this so much. We'll get to that in a minute. So
Is the hand
okay,
in dark mode?
and this actually, I think Matthew, you'll agree with this. It kind of plays towards what you're saying. It's just a little bit more Steven's hot take for the episode, or at least his first one. I strongly believe, because I see both of your points, Matthew and Nathan, and I don't disagree with either of you. I don't fully agree with either of you, but this kind of is encompassing of both sides of the opinion, but it's more extreme middle, I guess. I strongly believe that there has to be a change in culture in the workplace universally for all people across the board. Is everyone has to become more technical. So
100%.
that is just the nature of our world and the way it is now and the where it is going and the way the workplace is and where it is going. People, 100% of people in the workplace, I don't care your age, I don't care your background, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Everyone has to become more technical. If you want to continue working in the workplaces of today
In a technical
and you want to
space.
be successful, you have to be technical. You have to get more technical.
Well,
There
this
is
is-
no excuse. Nobody gets a pass. It doesn't matter. Some of this stuff that we're complaining about,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, people should know this. No, they should in fact know these things because they're coming up in more and more and more average everyday scenarios. And it's not going to stop. It's not going to slow down. It's just going to get worse. And so
Unless society collapses.
I mean,
one can only
we're
hope.
edging closer to Terminator 2 right
Anyway,
now.
but so in this, I guess more so, I do agree with Matthew, and I disagree with some of your premise, Nathan. Not everything that you've said. I like being fair to people. I like being, in that middle ground. But the reality is, for a best case scenario, a best case future scenario, where the workplace is more efficient and effective, not that anybody cares about that in the real world, but let's say that we're striving for that. The average user, the average employee at a company, from the janitor to the CEO, has to the whole excuse of, I've heard it so many times, I'm just not real good with computers. Then you need to be on welfare and just sit at home because you're no good in the workplace. I mean, I'm sorry, no, and I mean that. Like, if your if your thought process about yourself is, I'm just not real good at computers, ergo I'm not going to learn, I'm going to refuse to learn anything.
That's the willfully
I'm
ignorant.
yeah, exactly. I'm of this mentality of myself, so I'm not going to try. Then you don't need to be in the workplace. You're not going to be any good to anybody in about 5 years.
Not true. Not true at all. They're going to be great for the scammers.
Well,
Phenomenal for the scammers.
yes, they are making a great economy for scammers. That is
Yeah.
actually
Getting a
But
massive
correct me
payday
if I'm wrong.
from
To
that.
Nathan's credit, he's not arguing for that. He's just arguing that there is a burden on us to educate the users.
So,
And I agree with the
a
premise.
good
I agree
example.
with the
So,
premise.
a great example is I am typically speaking for, I am more, I am first contact, first technical contact for many companies. And half the reason we get clients we do are because previous support was terrible.
Yeah.
And so when I'm walking in, it is, even those that are trying to figure things out have not been given anything to figure it out. And yes, there is a shocking number of people that it's, oh, I'm just not technical. Part of the reason they say, oh, I'm not technical, though, is because the technical people make it so unnecessarily complicated, like domains.
No, and this is where I will wholeheartedly agree with you. And I feel like that's where my whole, yes, I will still complain about having to educate people because I don't want to have to educate people, but I will embrace with open arms and do my best, give my best effort to those who are willing and those that are trying. Those people, we should make a a deliberate intent to nurture and to actually genuinely help, form a good relationship with, be like, have an understanding. It's like, hey, we get it, we understand you, understand us a little bit in that, we're having to pass on a lot of knowledge to you. There's a lot here to unpack, and we understand that it's a lot for you right now, but just hang in there with us. If you'll hang in there with us, we'll try and softball it to you, and we'll get you there. But there has to be that's the most effective relationship that it's going to get people where they need to be, get things where they need to be.
And some of this,
it's the people that we have to fight with that, as Matthew is describing, that refuse to have that relationship with us, and give it, at least give on their side, at least give some effort to work with us to learn something. That's where the big problem.
See, that's the kind of person that I'm describing when I say we need to leave the normies behind. Like you're describing it exactly.
and you see, and that's part, and that's part of why we did that exercise as far as defining a normal user, because I don't consider that a normal user. That is a willfully ignorant user.
Yeah, so we're all on the same page there.
All I want
So
is
that means you have to stop using the term normie because it's short for normal, and we established that a normal user isn't
Well, that should be an average user.
I completely understand now why techs eventually move up to the data center so they can hang up their hammocks in the hot aisle and take naps.
Mhm.
It makes perfect sense. I don't want to
Get away from people.
I'm to the point of the career now where I'm technically not user facing anymore. I now just like, all right, it's a user. All right, they go Send it to the support team.
Oh,
Go to the support team
No,
now.
I think I made progress on that front.
You
So
did.
I'm in a very unique position in where I am, where I would love to achieve what you're describing, but it's darn near impossible because I've been the only consistency in where I am for 7 years, and 8 years. But
Are we going for
I
9?
achieved the goal at least for one client for a thing, just for a, hey, we needed to inform you about this. The guy that I work with, they reached out to him and didn't copy me on the email.
It's happening.
It's happening.
Nature is healing.
I was they, he forwarded the email to, he was like, hey, I don't really know what to make of this. And I looked at it, I was like in my head, I'm like, why don't they just send it to you? Why didn't they copy? They didn't copy. Ooh, I'm not gonna discourage this. So I just kind of bridged the gap for him and kind of got him where he needed to be in an understanding of like the situation. I was like, yeah, go ahead and respond with this. He's like, you want me to copy it? No. You handle this. You got this, buddy.
So I was watching it. Now I will, for those listening, I will warn, as tempting as it is to try to get out of ever dealing with users ever.
Oh, you never get away from it.
I was watching very recently a video of basically a developer presenting a new language in use for some core Linux features. And it
This guy calls
was
us nerds.
it was
Oh,
one
was
of
this
the-
was this the guy trying to introduce Rust to the
Yes.
Linux kernel? Yes, I know what
it
you're
was
talking about.
it was the one of the greatest examples of atrophied common sense I've ever seen. And it was all of these, I'm sure every person in that room, each individual was smarter than we are combined. I'm sure it was
At least in their domain.
I'm sure they were all geniuses. But it was I have been in whole department meetings that just go completely off the rails petty. And it was a master class, and those were master classes in respect and diplomacy compared with the garbage that I witnessed from these genius developer people.
So
Do you want to know why Linux isn't on the mainstream desktop for the majority of users?
Because the people that develop for it don't have a clue how to deal with
It's
people.
Linux users. That's
I
literally
think
it.
at the kernel level, yes.
Yeah.
And
No.
like it depends on.
It's
but
not,
at the
it's
kernel
not
level,
even just
so-
development. It's just that mentality you just described. That is, in all accounts, if you go like on the forums and everything, that's just about the average Linux user.
No, Linux users don't have an operating system superiority complex. No, not at all.
It is. I chose so. Everybody chooses their
I was
There
trying
it
to be
is.
subtle.
everybody chooses their tool and uses it because they believe it's the best, right? Like Nathan uses Mac OS because he believes it's the best.
No, actually,
you guys use
not
Windows
no, actually, I don't.
because either you
No, other
believe it's
people
the
have
best,
this thing
really
called
don't.
nuance.
either you believe it's the best tool for what you do, or you're a masochist. There's no.
Oh,
in
no, there's
between.
there's completely
no,
It's not
in
the
between.
If,
No,
I'm,
there's
a, if I'm a
in-betweens.
masochist, I would just run terminal Linux all day, every day. I don't because one, I am the master of breaking software. Like I have now somehow bricked a Proxmox instance by just attaching 2 iSCSI drives. Okay, don't ask me how it happened. It's dead. No idea. Gonna have to rebuild that one. My biggest issue I always have with Linux is, yeah, when it breaks, I typically know how to fix it. That's not a problem. It's whenever it tries to do something just slightly towards an edge case, mine completely flips upside down and it destroys everything I've been working on. I'm like, I can't do that. The reason why I'm on Windows is, for me, it's the most stable platform I have had. Yes, it absolutely sucks when it comes to the privacy standpoint and the longevity of actually keeping my OS running for the longest time, because Windows is garbage after it runs like pretty much on a machine for a year. You need to reinstall it. But for me, it's it's that little safe haven that I have that at least I know it's resilient to my workflow.
Yeah. So
Linux just
despite its shortcomings, you have determined that it's the best tool for your job.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying.
So real quick, before we get any farther on this,
Yeah, but you were calling me a
I don't wanna
masochist.
come
I'm
back
like,
to
I'm
that.
not a
Hold
masochist.
up, hold up, hold up,
hold up. I need to jump in and do a
Okay.
little education for our normal users that listen, because I had to learn all this the hard way. You have Microsoft Windows, you have Mac OS. Everyone listening has touched those at some point in their lives. In Linux, you have what the Linux people refer to as the kernel. Now, there's a lot of stuff that goes on top of it. There's a lot of stuff that goes around it. But Linux, from a program standpoint, it is the kernel.
Yeah.
And
For Mac OS, that would be Darwin. For Windows, that would be NT.
So, but for
every operating system has a kernel, just Linux is the kernel.
Yes. And there are tons of different things that you can put on top of it to actually use it. But that is the core engine.
I prefer guacamole on top of my Linux. It's pretty
good. This video that I'm referring to, the commentary I was listening for it pointed out that there is a substantial chance that there is literally one person in the world that actually knows how the file system works.
Yes.
And that to me encapsulates so much of the problems. And this isn't just Linux. This is like systems in general. Some of the core issues that you will run into in the IT space, as far as vital systems, it's typically never the more vital the system, the slower the chance it's been written down somewhere, the higher the chance it lives in one person's brain.
So back up a little bit, in the defense of the Linux kernel maintainers, because they were getting dunked on a lot. Granted, I won't disagree that there could have been a more tactful approach there.
No, just fork it.
The context of the situation, that's what should have happened. That's what should have happened, is that they should have, the Rust people, I have a bone to pick with them, but the Rust people should have.
That's a programming language, by the way.
Rust is a programming language. What the Linux kernel has been developed in for the last 30, 40 years, however long it's been.
Literally decades.
Literally, it's C.
It's been around longer than all of us have been alive.
Rust is a completely different language. It serves a similar purpose, and it's a similar domain, but it's a different language with different semantics, different rules. It would be like if, like Nathan, you're writing your documentation in English, and then some other team came in and they said, oh, hey, there's this new language called French, right? It's so much better than English. It clarifies a lot of stuff. It's so much better. So we're going to start writing some of the documentation in French, right? Now, to begin with, they argued that, well, the English people don't have to worry about it. Like, they don't have to support it. They don't have to deal with it. But what's happening is, as Rust takes over a little bit more here and there, it hasn't really been adopted too much because the C people are stalwarts, and for better or worse, and the Rust people are also incredibly stubborn. They clash, and the C people went out because that's the de facto standard. So what's happening here is they're trying to introduce Rust to the kernel. It's more than just, hey, we're going to do our own thing over here, because they are merging it into the same kernel. They didn't fork it and say, hey, we're going to work on a Rust fork, right? They are trying to get it into the main C kernel, which I think is the biggest mistake. So the long-term developers that have been developing in this one language for a long time, for better or worse, are now being told, they just want to, their project is going to be co-opted by this new language, instead of the new language just forking it and then rewriting it, right? Like, it's understandable, the frustration. I get it. I agree that Linux users, myself included, can be turds, and can be very stubborn about a lot of things, as I have just demonstrated on the show. But in this context, I don't disagree with the general opinion of the Rust maintainers. There's two sides to the story, and I kind of lean towards sympathizing with C people more than the Rust people. Because what the Rust people are doing is causing unnecessary headaches, when again, they can just create their own project, they can fork the Linux kernel, and then slowly start rewriting it in Rust. There's no reason for them, at least from what I see, right? And I'm not a kernel maintainer, but from what I see, there's no reason for them to try to then merge it into the main kernel.
Except
Like I
for
don't
so
understand
this
why
is
that's a
because
thing.
they're literally because this is just a matter of principle, and it's two mentalities butting heads and
It is-
saying I'm right and I'm better.
It is the Linux user's mentality versus the Linux user's mentality is what it
Yes.
is.
I have a
God.
solution to all of this.
It's Linux squared.
It's the
is what it is.
Spider-Man.
I have a
meme.
solution. Yes,
Literally.
it
I
is.
have a
It
solution
is.
to all of this. So we have Windows, we have Mac, we have Linux. We need a fourth.
Yeah, no,
we
definitely.
just need a new kernel.
We have Google Chrome, so
That doesn't count. That's not a kernel.
That's built on the Linux kernel.
No, we need.
It
Oh,
goes
yeah,
back
that's
to
true.
that.
It's Linux based. Yeah.
Let's resurrect Sega and let's have Sega make a new kernel.
Ooh, I
Well-
like that.
well, keep in mind it's with the chip, the hardware architecture is changing now. So in reality, they're gonna have to have a new kernel anyway.
No,
It'll be great.
Expand
Yes.
off of the Xbox 360 OS.
Shut up. The blades. We'll keep the blades. No, we're gonna go off ARM and Sega's gonna
I'm
develop.
talking about Risk 5.
Shut up.
I
we're
wanna-
gonna go
I wanna
off.
risk
We're
that
gonna go
computer.
off ARM. It's gonna be developed by Sega and Sega, and it's gonna be called Sonic OS
Okay, I can
because it's gotta go fast.
go.
That's so dumb. It's brilliant.
Okay, I will. Okay, Sonic or Echo OS.
I think Echo might already exist.
Dang it.
Sonic
Sonic
won't
again,
exist
it's
because
gotta
it's
go
not
fast.
copyrighted.
I mean,
Sonic
come on.
would. Sonic. Yeah. Okay.
And on that terrible,
You heard it here
bombshell-
first, folks.
Well, thank you for joining us on the Hostility Morning Podcast. If you stayed this long and like what you heard or have survived what you heard, please leave a comment and let us know. You can hit us up on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can hit us up on the Facebook, Instagrams, or at info@hostilitythemorning.com. We upload every other Tuesday real early on Substack, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. If you want a one-stop shop for everything hostile, you can find us at hostilitythemorning.com. And remember, have a hostile morning.